Hi, my name is Thomas Moser. I'm a global sales manager at Travel Oregon, and today's session will be understanding travel trade and demystifying FIT. Before we dive in, here's an overview of what we'll be covering today. The main goal of today's session is to explore how individual businesses can begin attracting international visitors and extend their marketing reach by leveraging Travel Oregon's relationships with receptive tour operators. During the session, I'll keep the abbreviations to a minimum, and at the end, I'll share some key terms and phrases as well as some general tips and tricks for the international market. Set the scene. Oregon's tourism economy has grown since 2003 when the lodging bill that founded Travel Oregon was passed. In the 20 plus years of collecting this data, the state has seen an increase in the number of jobs, the earnings generated by those jobs, the amount visitors spend while in Oregon, and the taxes collected by state and local offices by tourism related activities. This becomes more relevant when we start to discuss what details go into visitor spend. Using 2024 as an example, the state saw 14.3 billion in travel spending. 37% came from Oregonians traveling at least 50 miles from their home. Think a weekend getaway on the Oregon coast or an overnight in Portland to see a concert. 57% came from Americans traveling outside of the state, maybe on a business trip or a family road trip. This would also include people exploring Oregon as part of a group and a motorcoach tour. 6% came from international visitation. What we see with international visitors is that while they make up a small number of individual travelers, on average, each traveler spends more per day when compared to domestic visitors. Now we have the countries that make up the bulk of the work that global sales prioritizes. When picking these markets, we balance metrics like average stay and average spend against the resources it takes to engage the visitor. When looking at this information, it's important to see how different international markets impact Oregon's economy. People coming from the United Kingdom, Japan, and South Korea regularly outspend visitors from other markets. Another important detail, visitors from European countries tend to stay longer due to generous vacation policies. Where in the US we might get 2 weeks or 10 days of vacation, depending on the country, Europeans can get 35 to 43 days off each year, and they tend to use that time. One big factor is if Portland International Airport has a direct flight. Countries like Mexico and Canada have a mix of destinations, like year-round service to Vancouver, while seasonal airlift to Calgary. One flight not represented on this slide is a seasonal flight on Iceland Air to Keflavik. The reason for this is that Iceland Air tends to serve as something as a low-cost carrier connecting Europeans to North America, so we see a large mix of nationalities using that flight to enter Oregon. Taking a second longer to look at our international air service, Travel Oregon works closely with the Port of Portland to manage the international flights. Looking across the Atlantic, we have great service with British Airways to London and KLM to Amsterdam. Seasonally, we also see airlift from Condor and Icelandic Air. In 2026, we saw more international seat capacity during the summer than ever before, and we're working closely with the port to see the return of routes servicing Asia and Mexico City, represented on this slide with the green dashed lines. With that background out of the way, what are we talking about when we mention the FIT traveler? We're talking about a small group, often a family, so parents may be traveling with kids, seeking a destination that is less known. To generalize, an international visitor's first trip to the US will be to somewhere like New York City, Los Angeles, or Disney World. So, international visitors coming to Oregon have been to the States once or twice. Now that they've seen the Disney World, they're looking to experience something more cultural of the real United States. Because of consumer protection laws in their home countries, though, they tend to book these trips through travel agents into what we refer to as the travel trade. Booking travel directly with a hotel is something we're all familiar with. You load up the site, enter your dates, and secure the room. People in the States tend to prefer this method. It's less popular internationally. The travel trade is a spectrum of indirect ways consumers book travel. On one end, you have OTAs, online tour agencies like Booking.com, Expedia, Get Your Guide, Viator, the list goes on and on. Internationally, OTAs gain popularity each year and are an important channel to consider because of their marketing reach. However, they're not perfect, and where an OTA might lack in customer service, FIT booked itineraries excel in customer service. These are trips booked by experienced travelers who help guide the visitor in having the best trip possible. As we'll talk about in the next few slides, it's hard to assign a name to a travel agency as private agencies often operate in consortiums like Virtuoso or Travel Leaders Network with private booking platforms. On the other end of the spectrum, there is large group or motor coach tours. A standard coach holds 56 passengers, so these are package travel experiences done in mass. Every travel and every attraction is planned, if not paid for in advance, and there is no room for day of adjustments. Sometimes the seats on the bus will be booked by a travel agent, but is the bus tour operator making the arrangements with the hotel. The question becomes, how does a travel agent overseas gain access to Oregon businesses? This is where receptive tour operators come in. Receptive tour operators are experts on the destination they're selling and trusted partners for the international travel industry and the markets they sell to. They know the destinations and they know the businesses, and they know how to turn individual experiences into complete vacations. Most receptive tour operators are based here in the United States. In English and with US dollars, they negotiate pricing, gather product information, and create itineraries that are ready to be sold in the market's language and currency. Receptive tour operators aren't just making the reservations. They're carefully selecting products they believe will appeal to international travelers, and they're asking questions like, is this experience relatable? Does it fit into a larger itinerary? And can the business accommodate guests from different cultures? And is it easy to book? When your business becomes part of a receptive's portfolio, it's not about selling just a tour or one hotel room. It's about becoming part of the complete Oregon experience that's being promoted to international travelers. And that's why understanding the role of receptive tour operators is so important. They're long-term business partners who can help bring international bookings year after year. It's also important to understand that receptives need wholesale pricing. As a business, they're adding your experience into a larger vacation package that includes hotels, transportation, activities, and anything else their client needs. Their business model depends on having room to package and resell your product while still providing value to the traveler. Also, consistency matters just as much as price. If you've agreed to a rate or a set of booking terms, honoring those agreements builds trust. Travel trade relationships are built over a long time, and having a reputation for being dependable is one of the most valuable things you can have. Also, another best practice is making it easy for receptives to sell your business. With high quality photos, concise descriptions, clear operating dates, and simple booking information. All these things help them confidently include your product in an itinerary. Remember, many of these operators are selling Oregon from thousands of miles away, and anything you can do to make their job a little bit easier means they're more likely to recommend your business. When you first see this slide, it might seem like several different companies are all trying to take a piece of the pie. The reason for this is that different businesses along the distribution chain are providing different services. Using a hotel as an example with easy round numbers, let's say the hotel's standard retail rate is $100 per night. If a traveler books directly with a hotel, that's what they would pay. The hotel offers a wholesale rate of 30% to receptive tour operators. While it is a lower rate, often this is business that the hotel may not have reached on their own, so in part, the hotel is paying for the marketing reach of the receptive. The receptive operator then packages that hotel with other travel components, the transportation and attractions, then they're going to sell that package to an international tour operator. The international tour operator adds another part of the margin in order to cover their own marketing, maybe additional translation services, or whatever the case might be. From there, they work with travel retail advisors who also receive a commission for helping the traveler choose and book that particular vacation. It's worth mentioning that while this is the traditional buying chain, since the pandemic, we've seen many of these links merge. So sometimes international tour operators act as their own receptive, or tour operators may have a dedicated team of travel advisors. Understanding the traditional example is important to better position your product and negotiate effectively. So what does this look like in practice? Let's imagine a local business, a tour company specializing in guided mountain bike rides. At first, they just sell directly to visitors who happen to find them online or walk through the door. After a couple of years, they decide they want to reach international travelers. To do that, they need to work with the travel trade. The first step is getting their product ready for that audience. They'll need to streamline their tour options, maybe choosing to offer only a half-day ride, a full-day adventure, and a multi-day package. These rates are a little lower than what a traveler would pay directly, but they still make sure to turn a small profit. Next, the business makes a connection with a receptive tour operator. Maybe they meet at an industry event like IPW or Go West, or maybe they're introduced by their local DMO. However they meet, the two parties will next figure out all the details, the pricing, the booking window, the cancellation policy, and how the tour appears in the marketing materials. From there, the receptive takes over. They fold the mountain bike tour into a larger package, perhaps an Oregon Coast adventure itinerary that includes 8 days of lodging in 4 cities, dining, and whitewater rafting on day 2 with a mountain bike tour on day 6. That package gets sold internationally through tour operators and travel agents. Now suddenly, travelers in Germany and Australia can book an Oregon vacation. When those guests arrive in Oregon, they've already booked and paid, so they show up ready to experience everything it has to offer. They enjoy the trails, have a great experience, and go home with a story to tell. For the bike company, it means more consistent business and a growth potential. When all the different pieces come together, this is what happens. This is what a fully bookable itinerary looks like. This is a 12-day tour that starts in Seattle, makes its way down the Oregon coast, stops in Ashland to see Crater Lake, before looping back through the gorge to fly out of Portland. There is a quick paragraph explaining each day and a list of possible hotels the client could be booked into for each town. In this example, the tour operator would pick the hotel depending on what they're thinking, whether that's budget, family friendly, or maybe luxury. Then they add in experiences to fit the theme, maybe wine tasting, adventure, shopping, arts and culture. The receptive then works with the selected hotels and attractions to get everything booked. Once confirmed, the tour operator sells the final package product to the visitor. All of these steps takes time, and that's why it's important to have rates available 12 to 18 months out. I've done my best to limit the terminology used in this presentation and provide definitions as we went along. However, there are some key terms I would recommend as it helps to build credibility and speeds along the process when you're working with receptive tour operators. Some of the important terms on this list would be the difference between inbound and outbound. The Travel Oregon sales team works with outbound operators because then people are leaving their place of origin to visit Oregon. We also work with Oregonians operating inbound tours, which means they're a local tour operator actively marketing outside of the state or country. Another term is open jaw. This is the type of tour we looked at a few slides ago, where the point of entry is different than the point of departure. So Seattle to Portland, Seattle to San Francisco, or any other combination of international airports that puts people in Oregon. The first recommendation is to engage with Travel Oregon and your local DMO. Our role is to help connect Oregon tourism businesses with the travel trade. We participate at international trade shows, host familiarization tours, and maintain relationships with international tour operators throughout the year. If you're interested in working with the travel trade, let us know. We can help you understand where your product fits and identify opportunities to make introductions. Responsiveness is another factor that can set you apart. If a receptive contacts you with a question about availability, pricing, or product details, try to respond as quickly as possible. Even if you don't have the final answer, a simple message acknowledging the request and letting them know you'll follow up demonstrates professionalism and reliability. So often, they may be working with international clients across multiple time zones, and they have their own deadlines that they need to meet. At the end of the day, receptive tour operators are looking for businesses that are easy to work with. They want partners who communicate clearly, provide the information they need, respond promptly, and deliver the experience they've promised. If you can do those things consistently, you will stand out, and you'll be much more likely to become part of itineraries that they sell to travelers from around the world. I want to leave you with some practical advice that can make a real difference when working with receptive tour operators. First, follow up on leads. If you meet a receptive at an industry event or being introduced to one from a DMO, don't let that conversation end. Send a follow-up email and answer any questions they've asked. Building relationships in the travel trade won't happen in a single interaction. It's important to think about these relationships over the long term. International travel is built on trust. A receptive may work with your business for years, gradually increasing bookings as they gain confidence in your product. Success isn't measured by one contract or one busy season, but it's the consistent partnerships that grow over time. Another great way to build these relationships is by participating in familiarization tours or FAM tours. These trips give receptive operators, tour operators, travel advisors, and media the opportunity to experience your business firsthand, and it's much easier for someone to confidently sell your product when they've stayed at your property or taken your tour themselves. FAMs are one of the most effective marketing tools in the travel trade. And finally, be patient. International travel moves at a different pace than the domestic markets. You might sign an agreement today and not see your first booking for another year, and that's completely normal. The businesses we've seen succeed in the travel trade understand that they're investing in future business. At the highest level, success in the sector is categorized as new product being made available to international markets. A handful of international visitors staying 2 or 3 nights and spending throughout the community can create more economic impact than a larger number of day visitors. When a receptive includes a hotel in an itinerary, they're creating opportunities for nearby restaurants, shops, guides, museums, and other attractions. Ultimately, success means becoming a trusted part of the international travel trade network. When receptive tour operators know they can rely on your business, they'll continue to include you in future itineraries, creating a steady pipeline of international visitors for years to come. Lastly, please reach out if you have any questions or concerns. The team is always interested in what's new with your business and in your communities. If you're interested in learning more, we'd love to talk to you about attending trade shows and getting your product trade ready. Thank you for your time today.